Since the day you could form thoughts, you were told that discipline was about motivation, about feeling inspired, about finding your passion and following your dreams. They fed you fairy tales about willpower being enough, about positive thinking conquering all obstacles, about success coming to those who simply want it badly enough. This is garbage, pure toxic garbage that has kept you weak, inconsistent, and at the mercy of your own fluctuating emotions. Real discipline, the kind that builds empires, conquers kingdoms, and transforms ordinary men into legends, has nothing to do with feelings. It has everything to do with strategy, with calculated control, with the cold, methodical construction of an unbreakable mind. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than any philosopher before or since. While others wrote poetry about virtue and noble intentions, Machiavelli dissected power with the precision of a surgeon. He knew that the world belongs not to the pure of heart, but to those who have mastered the art of self-command. Most people live like conquered territories, overrun by impulses, dominated by distractions, constantly surrendering to whatever force exerts the strongest pressure at any given moment. They wake up with good intentions and go to bed with excuses. They make plans they don't follow, set goals they don't achieve, and wonder why their lives never change. But you, if you have the stomach for what's coming, will learn to live like a Renaissance prince. You will discover how to rule your own mind with the same ruthless efficiency that Machiavelli advised rulers to govern their states. You will master the internal politics of your own psychology, eliminate the weak elements of your character, and forge yourself into an instrument of pure will. This is not self-help. This is warfare, psychological warfare, against every soft, undisciplined part of yourself that has been sabotaging your potential. And like all warfare, it requires strategy, sacrifice, and the willingness to do what your enemies, your own weaknesses, are not prepared to do. In the next 25 minutes, you will learn Machiavelli's secret methods for building unbreakable self-discipline. Methods that have been tested in the crucible of political survival, refined through the centuries of application, and proven effective by those who understand that life is a game where only the disciplined survive. Are you ready to stop being governed by your impulses and start governing them instead? Then, let's begin your transformation from peasant to prince. The politics of self-command. Machiavelli's greatest insight was recognizing that governing others and governing oneself operate by identical principles. In The Prince, he writes about the necessity of maintaining order within one's territory before attempting to expand outward. The same rule applies to your mind. You cannot hope to control your external circumstances until you have established absolute dominion over your internal landscape. Consider this: every thought that enters your consciousness, every emotion that arises, every impulse that demands action, these are like subjects in your mental kingdom, and like any kingdom, there will always be rebellious factions, disruptive elements, and forces that seek to overthrow your authority. The undisciplined person is like a weak ruler who tries to appease every faction, satisfy every demand, and avoid all conflict. They negotiate with their laziness, make compromises with their fears, and offer concessions to their desires. The result is always the same: chaos, inconsistency, and eventual collapse. Machiavelli taught that effective rulers must sometimes be harsh, even cruel, to maintain order. They must be willing to suppress rebellion quickly and decisively, to make examples of those who would undermine their authority, and to prioritize long-term stability over short-term comfort. Your mind requires the same approach. When laziness whispers that you can start tomorrow, you must crush that voice immediately. When fear suggests that your goals are too ambitious, you must silence it without negotiation. When comfort tempts you to lower your standards, you must respond with the cold efficiency of a tyrant, eliminating threats to his reign. This is not about being harsh with others. It's about being strategically harsh with the weak aspects of yourself that have been ruling your life through manipulation and false promises. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to be feared rather than loved when forced to choose, you must learn to fear your own disapproval more than you desire immediate gratification. The disciplined mind operates like a well-ordered state, clear hierarchies, consistent enforcement of rules, swift punishment for transgressions, and unwavering commitment to the larger strategic vision. Every decision is evaluated not by how it feels in the moment, but by how it serves the ultimate objective of maintaining power and achieving long-term goals. Most people fail at discipline because they approach it like diplomats, trying to negotiate peace treaties with their own weaknesses. But weakness cannot be negotiated with. It can only be conquered. And conquest requires the mindset of a Renaissance prince, calculating, patient, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Fortune and Virtù, the eternal struggle. Machiavelli's most profound contribution to understanding human potential lies in his analysis of the eternal struggle between Fortuna, fortune, chance, circumstance, and Virtù, skill, strength, strategic capability. This battle plays out every single day in your life, though you may not recognize it. Fortuna is everything beyond your control, the weather that disrupts your plans, the traffic that makes you late, the mood you wake up in, the unexpected demands that derail your schedule. Fortuna is chaos, unpredictability, the random events that seem to conspire against your best intentions. Most people live as slaves to Fortuna. They plan their discipline around perfect conditions. I'll start my workout routine when I'm less busy. I'll begin that project when I feel more motivated. I'll change my habits when my life settles down. They wait for Fortuna to smile upon them, to provide ideal circumstances for their transformation. Machiavelli called this thinking the mindset of the conquered. He observed that Fortuna, like a woman, is the friend of young men because they are less cautious, more spirited, and with more audacity command her. But he also knew that Fortuna alone was never sufficient for lasting success. Virtù, in Machiavelli's terms, is your capacity to impose your will upon circumstances, regardless of what Fortuna throws at you. It's the skill of a general who wins battles in terrible weather, the cunning of a politician who turns scandals into opportunities, the persistence of an entrepreneur who builds empires during economic downturns. In terms of discipline, Virtù means developing systems so robust that they function regardless of your emotional state, your energy level, or your external circumstances. It means building habits that activate automatically, creating structures that eliminate the need for motivation, and cultivating an internal authority that doesn't negotiate with weakness. When your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and every fiber of your being wants to stay in bed, that's Fortuna testing your Virtù. When you're exhausted from work but still have training scheduled, that's the eternal battle playing out in real time. When you're stressed and seeking comfort in destructive habits, That's the moment when princes are separated from peasants. The secret that Machiavelli understood, and that most people never learn, is that virtù grows stronger through conflict with Fortuna, not through avoiding it. Every time you act according to your higher standards, despite unfavorable circumstances, you increase your capacity to command respect from your own mind. This is why successful people often seem to thrive in chaos, while others crumble under much less pressure. They have developed their virtù through deliberate practice, through repeatedly choosing discipline over comfort until it becomes as natural as breathing. The architecture of unbreakable habits. If you want to build discipline that lasts, you must understand Machiavelli's approach to institutional design. He knew that sustainable power required more than just personal charisma or temporary force. It required creating systems that would function effectively regardless of who was in charge. The same principle applies to your personal habits. Relying on motivation is like relying on a charismatic leader. It works temporarily, but it's fundamentally unstable. What you need is to create institutional structures in your mind and your environment that make the discipline the path of least resistance. Machiavelli advised rulers to establish clear laws, consistent enforcement mechanisms, and predictable consequences. Your personal discipline system requires the same elements. Clear rules about what you will and won't do, consistent methods for implementing those rules, and immediate consequences for violations. Most people fail because they try to build habits like democracies. Everything is up for discussion. Every decision requires a vote. Every rule can be overturned by popular sentiment. But habits work like absolute monarchies. The law is the law. Enforcement is swift and certain, and there is no court of appeals. Consider how Machiavelli structured his recommendations for maintaining political power. Eliminate potential threats before they become actual threats. Reward loyalty immediately and visibly. Make the cost of rebellion higher than the cost of compliance. And never make exceptions that undermine the authority of the system. Applied to habit formation, this means identify and eliminate triggers for unwanted behaviors before they activate. Reward yourself immediately for following through on commitments. Make breaking your rules more painful than following them, and never negotiate with the part of your mind that seeks exceptions. The architecture of unbreakable habits also requires what Machiavelli called necessary cruelties, harsh measures that prevent worse outcomes later. This might mean throwing away all junk food in your house, canceling subscriptions that waste your time, or ending relationships with people who sabotage your growth. These actions feel extreme in the moment, but they're actually compassionate toward your future self. Just as a wise ruler makes difficult decisions to prevent civil war, a disciplined person makes uncomfortable choices to prevent the chaos that comes from weak self-governance. The key is understanding that your current self and your future self are different people with different interests. Your current self wants comfort, ease, and immediate gratification. Your future self wants achievement, respect, and the fruits of consistent effort. Discipline is about governing in favor of your future self, even when your current self protests. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. The Lion and the Fox: Strategic Flexibility. One of Machiavelli's most famous teachings concerns the necessity for rulers to embody both the lion and the fox, to possess both the strength to fight and the cunning to avoid unnecessary battles. This dual nature is essential for mastering discipline, though most people understand only half the equation. The lion represents raw force, direct confrontation with obstacles, the willingness to power through resistance, regardless of how difficult it becomes. This is the part of discipline that most people recognize. The ability to wake up early when you don't want to continue working when you're tired, to maintain your standards when it would be easier to quit. But the lion alone is not sufficient. Pure force without intelligence leads to burnout, injury, and ultimately failure. The warrior who fights every battle head-on will eventually encounter an opponent who cannot be defeated through strength alone. This is where the fox comes in. The fox represents strategic thinking, the ability to find elegant solutions to complex problems, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to find alternative paths. In terms of discipline, the fox is what allows you to maintain your standards without exhausting yourself in constant internal warfare. For example, the lion approach to avoiding junk food is to rely on willpower, to stare at tempting foods and force yourself to resist through pure mental strength. This works sometimes, but it's exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. The fox approach is to restructure your environment so that healthy choices become automatic and unhealthy choices require extra effort. You remove tempting foods from your house. You plan your meals in advance. You create systems that make good choices easier than bad ones. The lion approach to waking up early is to set an alarm and force yourself out of bed through sheer determination. The fox approach is to go to bed earlier, put your alarm across the room, set up your workout clothes the night before, and create a morning routine so compelling that you actually want to get up. Machiavelli understood that the most effective rulers were those who could switch between these modes fluidly, using force when necessary, but preferring intelligence when possible. They fought when they had to, but they structured their kingdoms so that most potential conflicts were avoided before they began. The same flexibility is required for lasting discipline. You need the lion's strength for those moments when willpower is your only option. But you need the fox's cunning to create conditions where willpower is rarely necessary, where your environment supports your goals, and where good choices feel natural rather than forced. This strategic approach to discipline is what separates temporary changes from permanent transformation. The lion can win battles, but the fox designs the war to be unwinnable for your weaknesses. The prince's daily warfare. Now we come to the practical implementation, how to structure your daily life like a Machiavellian prince, waging strategic warfare against chaos, inconsistency, and mediocrity. This is where philosophy transforms into power, where theory becomes the tool that reshapes your reality. Machiavelli advised rulers to begin each day by surveying their territory, assessing threats, and deploying resources strategically. Your morning routine should function the same way, not as a casual collection of habits, but as a military inspection of your mental and physical domain. First, reconnaissance. Before your mind fully awakens and begins generating the excuses and rationalizations that will sabotage your day, you must establish your intentions. This means reviewing your goals, confirming your priorities, and mentally rehearsing the challenges you're likely to face. The undisciplined mind stumbling through the day, reacting to whatever happens. The disciplined mind anticipates obstacles and prepares responses in advance. Second, resource allocation. Just as a wise ruler deploys his best troops where they're most needed, you must deploy your energy, attention, and willpower strategically. Your cognitive resources are finite. Spending them on trivial decisions leaves you defenseless when important challenges arise. This is why successful people often wear similar clothes, eat similar meals, and follow predictable routines. They're not being boring, they're being strategic. Third, defensive positioning. Machiavelli taught that the best defense is often preventing attacks before they begin. In your daily life, this means structuring your environment to eliminate temptations, distractions, and opportunities for self-sabotage. If you want to read more, put books everywhere and hide your phone. If you want to eat better, fill your kitchen with healthy foods and remove everything else. Your environment should be designed to make good choices inevitable and bad choices inconvenient. Fourth, tactical execution. Every interaction with your own mind becomes a political negotiation. When laziness suggests you skip your workout, you don't argue. You simply implement the predetermined protocol. When fear whispers that you're not ready for that important project, you don't listen. You execute the strategy you established when your judgment was clear. The prince's day is structured around non-negotiable commitments, executed regardless of mood, energy, or circumstances. These aren't suggestions or goals. They're commands from your higher self to your lower self, backed by the full authority of your strategic vision. But here's the crucial element that most people miss. This level of self-command requires what Machiavelli called the art of the possible. You must be realistic about your current capacity while steadily expanding it. The prince who demands too much too quickly from his subjects will face rebellion. The person who tries to transform their entire life overnight will face internal revolt. Start with small territories of control and expand gradually. Master one area of your life completely before attempting to conquer another. Build your authority slowly, consistently, and sustainably. Remember, you're not trying to become perfect immediately. You're trying to become the type of person who governs themselves with the strategic wisdom of a Renaissance prince, eliminating internal enemies. Machiavelli's most ruthless advice concerned the elimination of internal enemies, those within the ruler's own circle who posed threats to stability and authority. He understood that external enemies could be fought with armies, but internal enemies required more subtle and decisive action. Your mind harbors similar threats. The internal voices that justify weakness, the patterns of thought that sabotage your progress, the emotional habits that undermine your authority over yourself. These internal enemies are more dangerous than any external obstacle because they have intimate knowledge of your weaknesses and operate from within your defenses. The voice that says just this once when you're about to break a commitment, that's an internal enemy. The rationalization that explains why your circumstances are different, why the rules don't apply to you, why you deserve an exception, that's an internal enemy. The emotional pattern that seeks comfort through destructive habits whenever you face stress, that's an internal enemy. Machiavelli taught that internal enemies must be dealt with swiftly and completely. Half measures only teach them to be more careful, more subtle, more dangerous. If you negotiate with the part of your mind that seeks to lower your standards, you're teaching it that your authority can be challenged, your rules can be bent, your word cannot be trusted. This requires what Machiavelli called necessary harshness, the willingness to be firm with yourself, even when it feels cruel. When you catch your mind making excuses, you don't engage in debate. You shut down the conversation immediately. When you notice yourself seeking comfort through old destructive patterns, you don't gradually transition away. You stop completely and implement healthier alternatives. The internal enemy's greatest weapon is negotiation. It will offer compromises, suggest modifications, propose just small changes to your standards. But any compromise with weakness strengthens weakness and teaches it that persistence pays off. The disciplined mind learns to recognize these negotiations as attacks on its authority and responds accordingly. This doesn't mean being harsh with yourself emotionally. It means being firm with yourself strategically. You acknowledge the discomfort, recognize the desire for easier paths, but you don't allow these internal rebels to determine your actions. Your feelings become information, not instructions. Machiavelli also understood the importance of replacing eliminated enemies with loyal supporters. As you eliminate weak thought patterns, you must consciously cultivate strong ones. As you remove destructive habits, you must install constructive alternatives. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your mind will fill empty spaces with whatever is most readily available. The goal is not to become emotionally numb or psychologically rigid. The goal is to develop what Machiavelli called flexibility within firmness, the ability to adapt your tactics while never compromising your strategic principles. You can adjust your methods, but you never abandon your standards. The crown of self-mastery. You have now been given the keys to a kingdom, the kingdom of your own mind. But unlike inherited crowns or elected positions, this throne must be conquered daily. There is no ceremony that makes you the ruler of yourself. No external authority that can grant you discipline. No magic moment when self-mastery becomes automatic. Every morning, you must choose whether to be the prince or the peasant of your own existence. Every decision is a political act that either strengthens your authority or weakens it. Every habit is a law you either enforce or allow to be broken. Every response to difficulty is a test of whether you truly rule your own territory or are merely a figurehead while your impulses govern behind the scenes. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not as an abstract philosophical treatise, but as a practical manual for those who would actually hold power. What you've learned today is not meant to be admired from a distance. It's meant to be implemented immediately, tested under pressure, refined through experience. The world is full of people who understand discipline intellectually, but have never built it practically. They can speak eloquently about willpower, motivation, and personal development, but their lives remain chaotic, their goals unachieved, their potential unrealized. They are scholars of strength, but practitioners of weakness. You have a choice. You can close this video, feel inspired for a few hours, and return to your old patterns of inconsistency and excuse-making. Or you can begin immediately to implement what you've learned, to test these principles against your own resistance, to discover whether you have the stomach for the daily warfare that self-mastery requires. Machiavelli knew that reading about power was not the same as wielding it. Understanding strategy was not the same as winning wars. Knowing the principles of effective rule was not the same as actually governing. The same is true for discipline. Understanding its importance is not the same as possessing it. But for those who take action, who apply these lessons with the ruthless consistency of a Renaissance prince, the rewards are extraordinary. You will discover that you are capable of far more than you imagined. You will find that the person you become through disciplined self-governance is someone you actually respect, someone whose decisions you trust, someone who can be counted on to follow through regardless of circumstances. This is the crown of self-mastery, not the ability to control others, but the capacity to command yourself. Not the power to change the world, but the strength to change your response to the world. Not the elimination of all difficulties, but the development of the character that grows stronger through difficulty. In the comments below, write, "I choose to rule myself." This is not just a statement, it's a declaration of war against every weak, undisciplined part of yourself that has been running your life through manipulation and false promises. It's your coronation as the prince of your own existence. And remember, this video is just the beginning. The next one will take you even deeper into the psychology of power, the mechanics of transformation, and the practical strategies that separate those who dream from those who achieve. Your kingdom awaits your rule. The only question is whether you have the courage to claim your crown.